Yo, what's up guys? Today we're going to be creating this Minecraft explosion, and this is what it looks like. Alright, the first thing you want to do is you want to go down to the description and download a pack. Within this pack there will be a few things like these particle explosions I made. And there's 3 different variations of these particle explosions. There will be a dirt and a stone block that just kind of go up and down. They also have shadows. You can't see it here. And then there'll be 8 different versions of the hole. The reason there's 8 is there's different perspectives. So whichever perspective best matches your scene, you can use that one to coordinate. Alright, first thing you want to do is, I have this shot that I shot on a tripod. It's just a static shot, obviously. First thing you want to do, you want to find whichever hole you think is the best, match your perspective. So for me, I think this one here is kind of the closest to it. And it doesn't matter if the edges are cut off and not. What you want to do, you want to add a luma key. This luma key here is going to key out brighter, and you want to bring it up until right before all this white shows. You can see on the edges the white is showing. If you bring it down just a few more before you start losing detail actually inside your blocks, like the whites and the grays. Alright, get that. Then what you want to do is you want to drop a roughen edge. This just kind of makes it blend a little bit better. What you can do is you can change the border and the size. Try not to make it so much where there's holes in between, between the pieces. Just kind of a little bit of a rough edge. You can also play around with the scale if you want a big blobs going around or just smaller ones. But the other big part of this is the edge sharpness. You want to turn that down to give it a little bit of a feather look. Maybe not too much here, but just bring it back up. This is kind of blends it a little bit better with the edges. Close that, close that. Also want to drop a tint. Just lower the saturation a bit, I find. Bring it back to 20%. I also like to add a tritone. The tritone is the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. So I just try to find something in my scene. Something in my scene that's kind of like a midtone. So I'm just gonna go something gray over here. And then the secret is just kind of blending it back with the. So now we have this little crater in the driveway. So we'll close that. From there, what you want to do is go to project, find whichever particle explosion you like. They're all very similar and they all die off. Alright, I'm gonna go back, bring the particle explosion on top, go to the frame where I actually want the explosion to start. So I'm gonna start at frame or 1 second in. So at 1 second the explosion will start. So just kind of position it to where you want the position of it. So right now it's perfect. Also what you want to do is trim this. So if you press Alt square bracket, I'll bring it to the edge. So now before it pops in and then the explosion happens. Here we're going to hide the particles, create a new solid. This solid we're going to call hole mat. Perfect. We get the ellipse tool. Try to go towards the middle of the clip. Go down. Well, if you hold shift it creates a perfect circle. So just create a little circle like that. Go back to frame 1. If you click the little pan behind tool, you click this and move the anchor point of where the circle is. So it'll be scaling from this position. You can go in and out. So then what we want to do is toggle switches if you can't see it, or press F4. Make a 3D layer. Rotate it along the first axis here, so it's kind of like a disc. Press V to switch back to your original. Kind of bring it over the middle of the explosion. Trim it. Press S. Click the keyframe. Go a couple frames in. Wait to 2 seconds. And then just have the circle expand. Very wide. You can feather the edges a little bit. You want to make this a little bit less organic. You can add a turbulent displacement. Change the size down. Maybe up the amount. So now it's not circle anymore. It's just kind of weird shape. From here, you want to go to your hole. Toggle the switches once more. Go to track mats and change it to alpha mat. What's happening now is wherever that circle is where the hole would be. So this creates a little bit of an animation of the circle moving out. It's like that. Alright. From there, we're going to turn back on the particles. Make sure the timing. So you can see that the explosion hasn't reached this point, but the hole is there. So you can adjust the keyframes. If you go back to this hole mat, press U to open up so you can see the keyframes. Go to the end and just kind of bring the scale back down. Alright, that's looking pretty good. From there, what we're going to do, we're going to get these side blocks, drop them on top, and I created a stone and dirt one. So what you can do is just click G and mask out whichever one you like. But if you look closely, when these blocks, let me just solo the 2 layers. Look close. You can see that it creates the shadow as long on the bottom. So you do want to mask that out and not just masking out the shape, because you'll be missing out the shadow unless you don't need the shadow. Alright. So I'm going to press V to get rid of the pen tool. Bring this over. There's a few things I'm going to do here. I'm going to press S, scale it down a bit, kind of move it so the hole is actually there. We're going to unsolo the 2 layers so we can see everything again. Just kind of scale it down, kind of position it wherever you like. Just gonna add a quick fast blur to it. This fast blur is just so it doesn't look as sharp and not match the environment as much. So you can see that the block is already there from the thing. What I'm going to do is, when this explosion is in front, so we're going to drop this below it, I'm going to find a point where you can't see the block. So right here, you can't see the block at all. And that's where I'm going to have it come in. So you could just trim this to here. So the block isn't there at all. And then as soon as this frame hits where it's covered, once it fades away, you can see the block. So what you can do too is just get the side block duplicated by pressing Ctrl D, moving it over to somewhere else. Let's scale this one up a bit. Not too big. And to have it so the blocks aren't moving up at the same time, what you can do is just move it along the timeline, trimming it down, and then just finding a different spot. For this one here, it's going to be a little bit harder because the explosion itself isn't covering it. There's no point where the white will be covering it. So I just do a quick fade in. So you find where you want it to fade in. So right about there. Press T on the keyboard to bring up your opacity. Then go a couple keyframes back, go to 0. So now we have it fading in. It's something you kind of see if you're looking for it, but if you're not, then it's not as bad. But this is still a little bit too big. I'm gonna put it further back as well. You can also, if you press T again, move the keyframes closer together, so it's a little bit quicker happening. But I'm just gonna put it behind it. Then you can see that the blocks aren't at the same height. The one's moving down when the other one is still moving up and whatnot. Just to get a little bit more random instead of all the blocks moving at the same time. Alright, so this is what we got so far. Alright, from here, what we're going to do is just add a quick little flash to it. So we're going to add another solid. We're going to call this flash. Go back up to the ellipse tool, click a little shape. This time I'm not going to hold shift because I want it to be a little bit more of a bean looking shape. You press your mouse, press V to get back to your position. I'm going to move the anchor point as well down here. The reason for this is this, so when I scale it, it scales from that position out instead of moving down. So I'm just going to get that. Just going to position it in the middle of the explosion here. First thing I want to do, fractal noise. Just going to bump up the contrast to get a bit more burn spots and then lower the brightness a bit. So it's just the block there. We're gonna go to the beginning of the composition, this evolution keyframe, move down to about 4 seconds in, change the evolution to about 4. So now we just have, if I solo this later, we just have this animated noise. Alright, solo it. I'm gonna actually hide the particles. Here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna feather the mask just a wee bit. Add a turbulent displacement. And I'm gonna bring down the size just a bit. And then add the amount to give it that more sharp looks. Almost like we want. Perfect. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim that. Let's go to the mask. Press M on the keyboard, it'll bring up the mask path. If you want to keyframe it, press the little time watch. Bring the layers. Scale it down. It's okay if you got this weird little thing, because the frames before you won't see it. But from here, I'm gonna go, let's go to frame 16 frames, and I'm gonna expand this back out to cover this explosion. It just kind of builds up. Might have to have it move a bit quicker. I'm gonna move this keyframe to 8 frames, so it's half the speed. It just builds up very quickly. Minimize fractalize turbulent noise. I'm gonna add a VC color vibrance. Go down, change it to the firing kind of look. Also, I'm gonna change this to screen. Nice. So it's not the firing. A bit more reddish. thing you can do to make it look kind of like Minecraft is there's Mosaic. You drop it, it makes it turn into blocks. And if you change this to 150, 150, oh, maybe that's a bit too high, 100, 100, you can see it's kind of got that block feel to it. You can do this if you like. I might just turn it off for now and try some other stuff. Next one is radial fast. This here will give it that real like power look. If you go like this, drop this down so it's shining up. So now it's just like that. I know it doesn't exactly look like an explosion yet, but you'll see in a bit. Alright. There, I'm gonna add a quick glow. Bring down the threshold just a tad and bring up the radius quite a bit. Also bring down the intensity because you don't want just reds going on. Let's turn the particles back on. This kind of gets that glow behind it. I'm gonna try to fix up this mask here. These points and bring them down. Alright. I'm trying to make this just a quick flash, so I'm going to press T on the flash layer and U, and right when the explosion reaches its final height, I'm going to press the opacity and bring it down. So now we have a quick flash of orange light and then the explosion. What you can also do is just make the glow radius a little bit more here. This is when you have to play around with the glow and decide how much of it you want to leak onto the edges. Quick little explosion there. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up the technique of how to make this Minecraft explosion. Obviously the compositing isn't as best as it could be. You can look on tutorials online to make these colors look a little bit better, just some videos about compositing. The flash itself, if you have some stock footage of an explosion, you can add it behind it to make it look a little bit better. You can also add a shockwave coming out, and yeah, it's quite simple. I've made all the elements for you guys, so less stressful to make the effect, but hope to see some videos with it, and hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for watching.